Hello, everyone. Welcome into today's session, Cultivating Trust Between Leaders and Followers, presented by social intelligence consultant at Tracom, Jason Kisa. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting in moderating today's session. We are on Zoom for today's session, and we will be emailing you a copy of this recording after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or that Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 and Tracom are so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Jason.
Thank you very much. Hey, welcome everybody. Happy almost the end of the week here. My name is Jason Keesaw. I'm a social intelligence consultant with Educate 360 and have the opportunity to travel around North America, work with leaders, teams of different variations, industries, things of that nature to help them develop greater emotional and social intelligence. My contact information is on the screen there if you find it useful. This can be interactive, okay? So throughout the webinar, I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to ask for your feedback, and we're going to utilize the chat for that. And you can already see people are jumping in the chat. So let's just do some practice right now. So I am logging in from Urbandale, Iowa, a northwest suburb of Des Moines. And I want to know where you're logging in from. So share in the chat, where are you from? We've got Washington, Missouri, Arizona, Michigan, Ohio, Nebraska, Jersey, Colorado, Texas, the Twin Cities. I'm going up to Minneapolis tomorrow. Sacramento, Washington, Pennsylvania, Texas, Maryland, Vegas, Ohio, San Diego. San Diego is one of the few places around the country that I have not been to facilitate, so hope to get there one day. Going to be outside of Arlington, Virginia in the next couple of months facilitating training, so looking forward to that. Awesome. All over the country here. So welcome everybody. Obviously different time frames jumping in here, so appreciate your time commitment with this. All right, so in the spirit of cultivating follower trust, I'm referencing a peer-reviewed article that identifies three key leadership behaviors and measures their effectiveness and the ones that tend to be most important here. So before I get into this, I want to hear from you. When you think about leadership behaviors, share in the chat. What are your top leadership behaviors for cultivating trust? What do you think when you're thinking about root reasons why trust gets built? What do you think? Heather, because my son is getting recruited by Iowa State for track and football. Heck yes, Iowa State. Integrity, empathy, clear and concise messaging. I like that. Sharing of information. That'd be some openness. We have another empathy. Transparency, leading by example, servant leadership. The platinum rule. We're going to be getting into the platinum rule. Resilience. Sonia King talks about showing by behavior. I'm guessing that's walking the talk, setting the example, leading by example. I like Renee's, Brian's getting rid of them and us. Awesome. Yeah. So if we whiteboarded this out, I bet you we could come up with a pretty consistent list, organize it, prioritize it, and created a heck of a program to support our leaders in displaying behaviors to cultivate that trust. I like that, be an ally and an advocate. So what we're going to be talking about today, the key discussion points, the purpose or the key discussion points of this paper. Consider the relationships between leadership behaviors and follower trust. That's the point of it. We're going to talk about three leadership behaviors that this paper outlines. I'm going to talk about the research methodology, the key findings, and the implications for practice. And then we'll end the first portion of this with the study conclusions, okay? So, and as we go through this, I'm going to ask you to fill in the chat. I'm going to ask you to give your self-assessment on where you sit or your organization sits in different areas. And then the second half of this, we're going to roll into how we would help contribute to developing these leadership behaviors for that leadership success in cultivating that trust. So the three leadership behaviors that this paper talks about, they break it into what they refer to as personal leadership, relational leadership, and contextual leadership. So we're going to go through each of the three right now, and after each one, I'm going to ask you to give a quick self-assessment on your organization. All right. The first one is personal leadership. Conveys a leader's personal qualities, competence, integrity, passion. This is really about credibility. To me, personal leadership is it's not about the relationship, it's about the perception you create as a leader that when people see you, hear you, you fit the mold, you meet the expectations. That's what a leader is. That's how they show up. Okay. So in the chat, on a scale of 1 to 5, when you think about your leaders within your organization, how strong is the personal leadership? That they look the part, they walk the talk, they're aware of the shadow they cast. This is more perception than relationship at the moment. Lots of threes, fours. We have a two thrown in there. So scale of 1 to 5. So the 6.5 and the 7, either you're saying it is amazing or you're giving us a scale on on a scale of 1 to 10. But on a scale of 1 to 5, yeah, all over the board here. Lots of threes and fours, so which is good, right? So it sounds like they're meeting those expectations in some form of looking the part, walking the talk, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's personal leadership. Let's take a look at relational leadership. To me, relational leadership is exactly what it says. It's about the relationship. And it's about the perception that the direct report has on their leader. Do they feel like they're treated fairly? Do they feel like they're respected? Do they feel like their leader cares? Do they have confidence that their leader will act in their best interest, be an ally and an advocate? And think about how critical that is. Think about your relationship with your leader. Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your leaders in relational leadership? Threes, 3.5s, lots of fours, fives. Okay, depends on the leader. I totally get that. We have a two thrown in there, two or three, depending on the situation. This is great, right? Not everyone's going to be perfect all the time. We're not going to be hitting fives all across the board all the time, but majority of threes and fours gives me optimism that um, we're moving in the right direction with it. All right. Then the third one, contextual leadership. And this isn't so much about perception that your leaders look like leaders, talk like leaders. This isn't so much about the relationship of fairness and trust, and they have my back, and I can count on them to be an advocate or ally. This is more about, within our organizations, there's written and unwritten rules, there's politics, there's policies, and how does leadership help their followers or direct reports navigate those complexities, or is it kind of survival of the fittest and they leave it to them to figure it out for themselves? And if they don't figure it out, are there consequences to it with that lack of support? So less about the perception, less about the relationship, and more about helping navigate the complexities of the relationship. I love it. People are jumping in. They know what's coming. Predictability is a good thing. This is interesting. Lots of threes and fours. And we're getting some zeros, some ones, some twos, two and a halves, twos. Right. So I'd say the personal leadership and the relational leadership, your scores were threes to fours, mainly A2, maybe A5. And then this is a little more varied from the zeros up to the fours and fives. Okay. So again, we're this paper is paying attention to personal leadership, relational leadership, and contextual leadership to identify if they're needed, what's their relationship with each other. So the two studies that were performed, study number one had 289 experienced managers. You can take a look at the method of measurement there. Participants were randomly assigned to scenarios that manipulated levels of personal, relational, and contextual leadership behaviors. Then the second study included 266 practicing managers that were evaluated by their peers, and they leveraged a 360 feedback survey for this. Okay. So the findings. Study number one, all three behaviors directly influence follower trust. So we should, from an organizational perspective, it sounds like we should um, have methodology to support our leaders in developing the three. But it appears that relational leadership played a bigger role in mediating and influencing the effectiveness of the other two. So all three are important. Seems that the relational leadership plays a bigger role, an influencing role. Let's see what study number two says. Similar to study number one, relational behaviors found to mediate the effects of personal and contextual leadership. And then it provided good validity from the findings of study one. Okay. So the two key findings with this, one around the direct influence of leadership behaviors. All three have a direct positive influence on follower trust. So again, if we're looking from 100,000 foot view and we're thinking strategically about leadership and management programming, we want to find a way for the organization to develop and support the three leadership behaviors. So all three are important. Then let's look at the second finding, paying attention to the role of relational leadership. So all three are important. It seems like the glue that holds it together, and that may actually create a foundation to help others develop, is that role of that relational leadership, which on the surface isn't surprising. But I think it's really important to see this in black and white on paper. Relationships matter. Um, you can have the degrees, you can have the titles, you can have the suit, you can look professional, you can have the look, you can have the leader speak. Um, You may have the expertise, the political savviness, as they might say, within the organization and navigate different things. But your ability to capitalize on both of those may be dependent on that relationship that you built with your direct reports or your followers, however you want to look at that, whether they're direct or not direct. Relationships matter, and we know it matters, but um, we're not always focused on that. So, three implications for practice around this. So, this is where we're taking the 100,000 foot view on if we're planning if we're creating an organization and creating programming around this is what we want to pay attention to. We want to find a way to prioritize those relational behaviors because what we found in the study, the lack of theirs may lower the effectiveness of other behaviors as well. You do that through leadership development with a um, uh, focus with the foundation of those relational behaviors. And then communication around that organizational context. So the implications are also, if we're putting these in a hierarchy, that the relational leadership is number one, the contextual leadership is second, and then both of those looks like they will strengthen that personal leadership of the look, the talk, the perception, things like that. And I guess you could also say if you have all that going for you, if your leaders have that going for you, that perception, and they're not developing the relationships and they're not helping people navigate the complexities of the organization, are people going to care about that personal leadership stuff? I would imagine that credibility is going to drop fairly quickly. Reference did Dilbert in the chat. All right, so prioritizing the relational behaviors. Leaders should focus on the relational behaviors because there's bigger implications in that, right? Leadership development focus with the foundation of relational behavior development, training programs that emphasize the development of relational leadership skills. And lots of words in that second bullet point, but we could probably put emotional intelligence in there, right? The journey of emotional intelligence is that self awareness, self management. So it's not just about aware of who you are, but how are you making decisions with that better information about yourself, but that attuned to the follower's experiences and perceptions. So that's that social awareness and relationship management, right? And then number three, the communication of organizational context. And to me, this is where we get into when organizations have strategic plans and their vision and their values and the objectives that scale down to the processes and systems, the better we're able to communicate that stuff should make life easier for every team member in understanding where they are in the organization and the hierarchy in the org chart and the role that their work plays in doing things, right? Predictability is a big deal. Sense of control is a big deal. And to me, communication in this organizational context can alleviate some of the blind spots that come with a lack of that communication and understanding of the organization's written and unwritten complexities, politics, however you want to put it. So the study conclusion, though all are important, not all leader behaviors are equally influential. Relational leadership behaviors are particularly important. And by prioritizing the relational behaviors and understanding their central role, leaders can more effectively build and sustain trust among their followers. And this is really the name of the game, right? So, conclusion of the study, relational leadership is really important. So, What does that have to do with us? What does that have to do with Educate 360 and Tracom Group? One of the ways that we support our clients is through helping organizations, leadership teams, sales teams, individual contributors develop those relational behaviors. Because whether it's leadership or it's business development or it's you need multiple people working together in a productive manner. Those relational behaviors are really important. So Tracom Group is a part of the Educate 360 family of companies. Tracom Group is a social intelligence company that creates research-based programming to help organizations accomplish what we are talking about. And the one that I'm going to reference today is the program Social Style and Versatility. And when it comes to behaviors and those relational behaviors, social style is all about building awareness around behavior patterns. So if we're thinking about leadership, there's particular patterns that we will utilize with direct reports or followers that have a better chance of working than others. And then the concept of versatility, somebody put in the comments, the platinum rule. The platinum rule is treating others how they want to be treated, right? So versatility is the building of the capabilities to adjust your behavior with the situations and interactions you're in. All of that is going to lead to stronger relational awareness. Okay, so how do we do this? First of all, it's the acknowledgement that people are different. People are different, that your team members are different, leaders and direct reports are different. So we just need to start that conversation. And there is a risk of these differences if we are not creating environments for people to learn about themselves and each other. If you get in the social psychology text, we are wired to have discomfort, prejudice, and aggression with those things and people that we're not familiar with that are different than us. It is within our wiring. Okay. We don't have to let that run the show, though. And through programming, through education, whatever mechanism you do it within your organization, the more we're able to support our people, the more we're able to support our leaders, the better chance they have of disrupting those automatic patterns of that discomfort and judgment and all of that to be advocates and allies of their followers, of their direct reports, to build that trust, right? Because that's really what it's about. So over the next few slides here, I'm going to show you how we do this, but I want you to consider two things, okay? I want you to think about yourself as we're going through this because I'm going to ask you a reflection question in a moment here. And I want you to think about someone who stresses you out, okay? So let's have some fun with number two there. Think about someone who stresses you out. Unless, I guess, raise your hand if you don't have any stress with people. We could do a whole other webinar on that, right? Um, so when you think about someone who stresses you out, in the chat, share what you experience from a behavior and communication perspective with the person that causes you stress. What are you experiencing from the other person that causes you stress? My director thinks I'm her emotional support person. Okay. Negativity, self preservation, laziness, defensive behavior, combativeness, unwilling to be open minded, always guarded, anxiety, negativity, shorter interactions, such that they're probably to the point, demanding, lack of I mentality, defensive mindset, disrupts meetings, communications. Commanding and demanding. Okay. Not listening. Indirect communication. So how do you got someone that's commanding and demanding and someone that's indirect. Yeah, so we've all got stuff. We've all got those people we work with that cause us challenges, cause us stress. Well, now let's take a step back and think about the leaders we are counting on to develop those relational behaviors and develop that trust. What happens if those things are at play there? What happens if there's stress or discomfort or name the behavior you put in the chat there? What if that dynamic is happening between the leader and the follower, the leader and the direct report? How does that impact the trust being built? Well, that's a silly question. We know it's going to impact it. So, part of what we want to do is we want to level set on the reality of our interactions. And part of it is understanding the human experience, which goes right into leadership. How it works today is we work with people, we interact with people, some way, shape, or form, and we're either comfortable or we're not. Think about the roles your leaders are in, whether they're a new leader coming into a team, they've adopted a team, a new team formed, whatever it is, we're running this risk. We're running the risk of leaders having direct reports on their teams. Some of them they're comfortable with, some of them they're not comfortable with for whatever reason. And this is real, I would say, in every organization, but we need to understand the implications of this, right? So when we are comfortable with somebody, we don't even notice it. It's all good. We're going to be more open to relationship developing, and we're going to be more likely to assign positive traits and judgments. Okay. And that will likely be the narrative with the relationship with this person. I suppose in case in the event it changes, but when it's all good, it's all good. And you think about the leader follower, leader direct report relationships that tend to be easier than others. We could describe those as comfortable. Okay. Well, what happens when the dynamic is not comfortable? What happens when there is some gap between a leader and the follower? What happens when a direct report is uncomfortable with the leader or vice versa? Think about the wedge that this forces in that relationship and how much harder it's going to be to develop those relational behaviors. So, when we interact with someone we're not totally comfortable with, and it could be for things they talk too fast, they talk too slow, they're pushy, they don't make decisions quick enough, they're super emotional, they don't show a lot of emotion. These are the things that cause challenges for people with each other, and we don't even realize it's happening. It's not that people have to do like super antisocial things or things that are goofy or destructive. We are judging the heck out of each other all the time. So what happens is when we have this discomfort with people, we're more likely to assign negative traits and judgments, and that's likely to run the show with the relationship. That can't happen in leadership, right? Leaders have to be better than that. Leaders have to have greater emotional intelligence, greater maturity than to be sucked into that discomfort judgment spot because your organization has too much on the line to have leaders that cannot figure out that relational piece. Okay. Now, going back to the human nature part of it, we're wired to have discomfort and judgment and prejudice and all that with people, but we can support it all in making it make more sense. So what we want to do, we want to try to avoid falling into the judgment trap, and we want to focus on those behaviors. We want to focus on observable behaviors, and we feel this is the key to developing that relational leadership. And you're seeing on the screen here, these are observable behaviors. What the key word here is observable. These are behaviors that we can see, that we can hear. This isn't personality. This isn't assumptions. This is behavior and communication that we experience every day from people. And we all have behavioral tendencies. Some people tend to be louder. Some people tend to be quieter. Some people tend to do things at a slower pace. Others tend to do it at a faster pace. Some folks tend to be really animated, others tend to be more reserved. Okay. And depending on how you measure things for your comfort, depending on your needs, you're going to have a different relationship with these behaviors than others. So you could have someone that experiences a direct report that's loud, fast paced, animated, and they may go, whoa, this person's got fire. They're passionate, high energy, self started. We need more of that on our team. For another leader, those behaviors could be overwhelming, threatening, and aggressive. Who's right? Or you may have a leader that has direct reports that they tend to be quieter, slower pace, a little more reserved. And one leader perceives that as they are easy to work with, they ask great questions. And another leader could see that as they're apathetic, they're disengaged, and they're withholding information. Again, who's right? So part of what we need to do is we need to help leaders understand their behaviors and their relationship with other behaviors as well. And part of that is focusing on observable behaviors. So, how we help people observe behaviors and really get to the heart of this relational leadership is through what we refer to as assertiveness and responsiveness. Okay. So, in a perfect world, the leaders learn this about themselves while also their team learns this about themselves and they all learn this about each other. So we measure assertiveness on a scale of what we refer to as more asking and more telling. Okay. And these are just ways to describe patterns of behavior. So people that tend to be more asking with their behavior, these are the behaviors that they show most of the time. They tend to talk less, they tend to do things at a slower pace. They're slower to make decisions, they're more cautious with risk. They're very interested in paying attention to and protecting the process. People that tend to be more tell-assertive show a different set of behaviors. They talk more, they're faster paced, they're quicker to make decisions, they're more comfortable with uncertainty, they're comfortable with chaos. They know they're going to make mistakes, they're going to figure it out as they go. Okay. Well, the people that tend to be more ask assertive, what they need from the relationship in their direct report or even their leader, they need more information, structure, predictability, and context. If people that are ask assertive don't have that, that's going to raise their tension. That's going to create stress and insecurity. That's going to make it hard for that relational leadership to take hold. People that tend to be more tell assertive, they want results and action and progress. When they don't feel that, they'll get impatient. They'll have some stress. And again, that's going to make it tough for those the relational behavior, leadership behaviors to take hold. So without going any further, if you have people within your leadership team who has relationships with direct reports where one of them tends to be more ask assertive and the other tends to be more tell assertive, and they don't know this about themselves or each other, what should you expect to happen? The differences are there without even trying. And if we don't understand it, we're going to default to what we know and what's comfortable for us, which is going to lead to that discomfort and judgment toward those behaviors we don't understand. Okay. So this is one dynamic, and this gets into pace and patience and impatience and urgency versus wanting to assess. This will be a relational leadership behavior killer if we don't understand this about ourselves and we don't understand this about our followers or direct reports. But that's only half of the equation. The other half is what we refer to as responsiveness. And this is the degree to which we show or control or show emotions. So about half the general population, they tend to be a little more reserved. They don't show a lot of emotion. We refer to that as more controlled. And as you go down the scale, people show more emotion. You see it more, you hear it more, you might even feel it more. Well, these behaviors are observable as well. And the reason why we're emphasizing these observable behaviors is that if we know what to look for, we're going to know what the needs are. We're going to know how to develop that relational leadership. This dynamic here is also the age-old task orientation versus people orientation. People that tend to be more controlled tend to be more task oriented. So people that tend to be more task oriented, those behaviors and on the top of the page, this is what you should expect to see from people that tend to be more task oriented. As you go down the scale to people that are more emoting, they tend to be more people oriented. And again, these behaviors are so important because there's leaders and managers all over the planet that have no clue these dynamics are real for them, and they're just letting their comfort and what they perceive to be right run the show and utilizing that with everybody without fully understanding the behavior piece. Well, how you work and communicate with these two different types of people matter. Here's how they tend to work, and we miss this all the time, and leaders don't understand this about their colleagues or their direct reports. People that tend to be more task oriented, they go from point A to point Z in a straight line. They may go at a different pace depending on their assertiveness. People that tend to be more ask assertive will move at a slower pace. More tell assertive will move at a faster pace. What do you think the line looks like for the emoting people, for the people? How do they work? How do they get the job done? How do they get results? Well, if people had their cameras on, I'm sure we would see a little of this. Deb, yep, up, down, vary. You're absolutely right. People work differently. They accomplish their goals differently, and we don't get it. And this is what leads to the judgment and the discomfort and the aligning ourselves with people we're comfortable with and judging people we're not. And we just don't know enough to really make a good decision about it. Okay. Because here's the implications of it. The people that are more task oriented have been navigating life this way most of their life, and they think this is the best way. And if you're not focused and you're not dialed in and consistent, there must be something wrong. Why would I trust you? And the people that are more emoting have been navigating relationships to get the job done most of their lives, and they think that's the best way. And if you're not kind and you're not interested in building connection with other people, why would I trust you? So the task oriented people get annoyed because they perceive the people lack focus and objectivity. And the people oriented people take things personally and go straight to disrespect because they perceive a lack of kindness and connection. This is kryptonite to relational leadership. What we need to do in the context of supporting leaders and managers in developing that relational leadership is whether it's social style or another mechanism, we need to help them make this make sense for them personally and the people they're working and communicating with every single day. There's too many opportunities to miss this. And this is where that relational leadership, those behaviors are not going to develop. So these dynamics roll right into the social style model. And you can see left to right is ask assertive to tell assertive, top to bottom is controlled to emoting. And this is how the behaviors show up most of the time for folks. So as you're looking at this, each of us has a dominant pattern of behavior. Okay. Not absolute. There's going to be different times throughout our day, throughout our interactions, we're going to behave differently, but we tend to have a home base that we go to. This is the key to developing those relational leadership behaviors. Understanding this about us but understanding about others, and I'm going to show you why this is so important in just a second. But what I'd like you to do when you're looking at these, let's go back to the chat. I'd like you to answer two questions. And I think you can probably guess what they're going to be. The first question is, what social style describes you most of the time? We have an amiable, we have an analytical, dry and expressive. Brian, I'm not sure what real means. So, as we're seeing the different social styles on this webinar, imagine we were a team. Imagine we are an organization trying to change the world. There are enough differences on this call that if we're not aware of this, can totally sabotage everything we're trying to go. So Brian, the whole goal with the flow, that's part of the goal is to be adaptable in different situations with different people, right? But what human nature says and what the style research says is we tend to have a home base we stick with most of the time. And the more stressed out we are, the more we're going to stick to that home base. I think you brought up that idea of self-preservation earlier. Okay. Question number two. Which social style describes a person who stresses you out most of the time? And I'm willing to bet it's different than yours. Amiables. Look at the variety. Like this is where we assume people experience similar things that we do, and they definitely do. But when you get down to it, people have different preferences. They have different needs. As a result of the different needs, they have different things that cause them stress. This is why this information, whether it's social style or not, this is why this is so important to unpack and teach people. I was in Victorville, California last week, earlier in the week, and I worked with a group of educators that they just were not communicating very effectively, and little silos were forming and things like this. Well, of the seven or eight people, half were analytical style, and one of the styles were represented along we had one driving, one expressive, one amiable. They had no clue. They had no clue why the analytical styles were slower to respond. The analytical styles didn't understand the fast-paced nature of the driving and expressive style. And these are people that are well-intended and they're committed to the goal and they're bought into the organization. The stuff is there's just too much foundation laid for us to have miscommunication, misunderstanding by not understanding this stuff. And if we go back to the entire purpose of this webinar, cultivating follower trust, leadership behaviors that cultivate follower trust, relational leadership being the most critical. So how do we make sense of this to develop those relational behaviors? It's through what we call versatility. And I mentioned it toward the beginning. Versatility is the platinum rule. You've all heard of the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others how they want to be treated, right? And for us to treat others how they want to be treated, It's important that we understand how we show up, what our needs are, what our tendencies are, what our blind spots are, because all that stuff is going to play a role in how effectively we're able to be curious, to learn about other people, manage some of the uncomfortable behaviors we may not understand, which leads to that discomfort, and ultimately develop those relational behaviors. So each style has a set of needs, has a set of really a key behavioral orientation that shows up most of the time to meet the need. The growth action is the weakness, and a backup behavior is the stress response when they're stressed. So as you're looking at through this, driving styles, they want results, and they tend to be more task oriented with how they work and communicate with other people. Think about that. How do you, if you tend to be more results focused and task oriented, meaning you're less people oriented, how the heck do you develop those relational behaviors with other people? Expressive style, they want results as well, but they are tend to be more people oriented in the process. They prefer to engage with people and work with people. They get excited by things and they want people to be on board and and partner with them and show approval for that. Well, shoot, when the driving style, when results aren't being met, they're going to become impatient and controlling. Expressive style, when they're not feeling that approval, they're going to become defensive and confrontational. How do you work through that stuff if you don't understand this? Amiable styles are different. They want more predictability and consistency with the relationship. When they get uncomfortable or stressed, they're more likely uh, to withdraw. They're going to get quiet and be agreeable. Analytical style is different than them. They have a need to be right, accuracy, the right decision, avoid making mistakes. Well, how do you reconcile this if you have a leader who's comfortable making mistakes and they have direct reports that do everything in their power to avoid the mistake? If they don't understand this about themselves or each other, someone's going to be stressed and frustrated. And then who's going to win that hierarchy? And imagine you've got leaders and managers not understanding this stuff, trying to navigate their relationships every single day, and they're assessing somebody's worth and fit based on behaviors they don't understand. All right, we're going to land the plane, and I'm going to give you relational leadership cheat codes for each style. And above all else, this is what you should pay attention to with that type of person to start developing those relational leadership behaviors. So, with a driving style, they're results oriented, they tend to be more task focused. The best thing you can do, regardless of your style, is focus on the results that are important to them. Some way, shape, or form, make it known to them that you get it, you see it, you understand it, you're committed to it. Once they have that security that you get it, then you can have other conversations if you need to talk about details, if you need to throw feelings or feedback in there. But if you come out of the gate and they don't feel like you're focused on the results that are important to them, there's going to be a gap right from the start, and you're going to have a heck of a time building that trust. And this goes for both sides of it. This is leaders having credibility with their direct reports, but it's also the direct reports building trust with the leaders as well. So focus on those results. When you're working with an expressive style, the cheat code is partner by showing interest in what excites them. Expressive styles get excited about what they're doing, the results they're pursuing, and they want other people to get excited too. Partner with them, get excited with them, and then if you need to slow them down, if you need to reroute them, redirect them, throw something else in there, you'll have an easier time doing it. But if they don't feel like you're a partner, you're going to have a heck of a time building that relationship with them. Amiable style, make a connection and show support. This means you too, driving styles. Make the connection. That's going to give them security with the relationship, and that's going to help them be more open and confident in navigating things with you, as opposed to shutting down or avoiding you anytime something gets uncomfortable. And then with the analytical style, whoops, respect their process for gathering data and making decisions. Nothing's going to frustrate an analytical style more than people not understanding their process. They want more information, they prefer more time, and they want to go through their process to make the right decision. Now, we can look at these and say this isn't a perfect world. This can't happen all the time, and you're absolutely right. But if we try to do this in the moments when we can, it's going to make life easier for us and them when the going gets tough. But if we don't understand this, if our leaders don't understand this, it's going to put them at a disadvantage at developing those relational behaviors that, going back to the beginning of this webinar, that study suggests are critical to rising up those other key leadership behaviors as well. So we'll have a few minutes for questions, but in the chat, what I want to know is what is your biggest takeaway from this webinar? And what is one thing you want to start doing as a result? Okay, I'll go back to the previous slide. The cheat code. Paying attention to people's styles. And Wendy, the reason we want to understand the style is that will tell us what the need in the cheat code is. Love it, Steve. Learning to observe others' preferred styles. You bring up a great point, Angelo. It is a balance, right? You can't have all relational behaviors, and you can't have all task behaviors. So the whole goal of this is to make it make sense so we can find that balance. And I've said it 100 times, if we have people that don't understand this and they're living in discomfort and judgment mode, good luck finding that balance. I think this is the key to empathy. If we can have more realistic expectations for people around the way they behave, we're not going to get as frustrated and irritated as the things that may have caused us challenges. All right, the chat has slowed down. I appreciate everybody's engagement and participation in this. Um, Please let us know how we can support you. If does anybody have any questions we can answer, or let's see here. Yeah.
I believe we have a couple questions ready to go. I'll go ahead and give our amazing audience another minute or two to throw any additional questions that are in the chat. But we did get one about the recording, so just as an FYI to everyone, if you wanted to take a peek back at some of the stuff that Jason went over in today's session, you can absolutely access that recording in an email after the webinar. So be on the lookout for that. And I also am going to go ahead and drop in some really amazing links that Jason covered today, some stuff about our social style, some stuff about E360 and Tracom. So be on the lookout for those links as well. They'll also be in that email. Alrighty, so we had a question come in here. What if you have the need to be right, but you value relationships too, Denise? You understand. You get it.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I would suggest that if you have a need to be right but value relationships, you're likely somewhere along the line between analytical and amiable. So ask assertive, amiable and analytical both have a need to be right, but their need to be right is a little different. The analyticals need to be right is less relational. It's more about the crossing the T's, the dotting the I's, the accuracy of the information, the results being correct. The amiable styles need to be right is more around how they're showing up, how they're doing things, how they're communicating. Amiable styles put a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect. So they may over prepare, they may over worry, they may be too concerned about what if I say the wrong thing or whatnot. So that's where their need to be right in, but it's definitely more relationship driven than worried about making a mistake as much.
Excellent.
This is
Awesome. Oh, yeah.
no, and this is the beauty of it because when you teach leaders how to observe behavior, if they can understand, for example, a direct report is somewhere between analytical and amiable, they're going to know how to work and communicate with them. And if you think about the best relationships you have, people are not perfect, but they've done something that lets you know and makes you feel like they get you. And that's why these cheat codes are here. It will help the people you work with know you get them, regardless of how imperfect the world is and how the differences we have.
Excellent. We did have one request. Can you please go back to the platinum rule one more time as a rule of thumb and a perfect area to sign off to, since we have just been getting a lot of great feedback on this. So thank you so much, Jason, for
Yeah.
having that back. And as a quick reminder, if you missed out on any part of this session, we will be sharing that recording with all of you via email after the webinar, so be on the lookout for that. But it looks like we covered everything for the rest of the session. So yeah, thank you all so much for your fantastic insights, your engagement. We really appreciate you coming in and taking a moment to learn with us. And as always, thank you so much, Jason.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day, everyone.
Of course, of course. Alrighty, have a fantastic rest of your day and the rest of your week. Let us know if you need anything in the meantime, but until next time, we'll see you all very soon. Bye for now.